Hello. I'm going to bring this meeting into order.
Mr. Chairman, I need to unmute us.
Oh,
Record.
excuse me.
We're now unmuted. Make sure I get the recording going.
Recording in progress.
And I will also say, in accordance with the open meeting laws, the board states for the record that this meeting is being recorded by NORCAM and may be recorded by other local media. Okay. Before I take the motion to go into executive session, just a few things. Today's hearing is the participants of today's hearing are the 5 select board members you see in front of you, plus if anyone has any questions for Mr. Klein from KP Law or Mr. Roberto. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I will not be making a motion to go into executive session, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Select Board go into executive session under Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Purpose 1, to discuss the discipline or dismissal of or complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual, and to omit Attorney Darren Klein, KP Law Town Council.
Second. Motion by Mr. O'Leary, second by Mr. Wallner. Any further discussion? Before we go, I will say that we may reconvene in open session. So, my apologies for the ups and downs. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No. No.
Please.
The roll call vote.
Roll call. Sorry about that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, through you, it needs to be a
Roll call.
vote.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Mr. O'Leary?
Aye.
Mr. Wallner? Aye. Mrs. Gonzalez?
Aye.
Mr. Massey?
Nay.
The chair is aye. So, if everyone can just temporarily, well, if we do reconvene in open session, just please exit the room. That was fine.
Will there be time for the public? But now they're telling me I can't.
Bring the open session back in order. Just so everyone knows, that was a procedural thing where Mr. Massey is asked to bring it back to open session, and that's what we did. Nothing else was discussed. I'll even say that. So, I'm going to read a notice that was also presented at when we first started this discussion about the purpose of tonight's meeting. And then I'm just going to summarize just a few housekeeping items, and then we'll begin. The purpose of the meeting tonight is to discuss complaints about Select Board Member Massey's conduct that occurred at the recent town meeting that, although took place over 2 days, June 10th and 11th, I believe are for only the purposes of commentary on June 11th. I want to clarify for that for the record. As well as for the purpose of holding a hearing to determine whether there is cause to rescind appointments to the Facilities Master Plan Committee or Fire Station Building Committee. As requested to the reasons for this meeting, are there verbal complaints were made by multiple town officials, including several select board members, about conduct during town meeting that, that you were made clear that you do not agree with the structure of committees to which we were appointed, as well as your treatment of other town officials during town meeting that included making inaccurate accusations that did not pertain to the substance of the article in the motion on the floor. So just a brief summary. Today we are here strictly for the agenda on one item and one item only, to discuss whether or not there are any merits that Mr. Massey should not still be the select board representative for the, I want to get this right, Facilities Master Plan Committee and or Fire Station Building Committee. That is all. We are not here to talk about the merits of the committee and what they've talked about so far. We're not here to talk about any other select board policy that exists towards committee and how they're formed and whatnot. Those are very important agenda items that were already going to be discussed before any of this happened in regular select board business, which some of you attend to us till midnight every other Monday, only once in the summer. So again, I'm going to give the opportunity, reasonable amount of time to everyone. The format is Mr. Massey is going to make a brief opening statement. Then I'm going to go to Mr. O'Leary, Mr. Wallner, Mrs. Gonzalez to add whatever they'd like to add, any opinions. Then Mr. Massey can respond to anything he heard, plus give any other information that he wants his other fellow select board members to hear. And then I'm going to make some closing remarks, and again ask Mr. Massey if he has anything to respond to me to. And I'm going to go one other time, and I'm going to be very clear. We're not going to repeat ourselves. We're not going to summarize. And after everybody's had a chance to say what they have said, we're going to have a vote, and I'm going to get home for Tubby.
Mr.
So,
Chairman, for purpose of transparency, who are the complainants?
Yes.
Who are the people that complain?
We're about to find out now. That's the purpose.
I want names.
Yes.
If you can't provide names, then you should resign as chair.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to take it from here?
Mr. Massey, please.
My opening statement will be my understanding of why I'm here. Fellow colleagues of the Select Board, Mr. Town Administrator, Town Council, to my family, friends, and residents. At the meeting on June 27th, as well as followed by the letter received by the Select Board on June 27th, it was made very clear that the complaints against me were from Mr. O'Leary and Mr. Wallner. 2 days of town meeting, 1,100 residents, 25 elected officials, no written complaints, only 2 verbal from my fellow colleagues. Mr. Wallner noted an explanation that is invalid and inaccurate on June 27th. He noted that this all started, unquote, this all started because he made a promise to the board to support the board's position and take action in that regard. Then at town meeting, he went the other way, so this is worthy of a future hearing. The board chose the day before to pass over the article 3-2, with Mr. O'Leary and Mr. Wallner being the only two naysayers. So at the time, I actually spoke in favor of the board's most recent action to it. It is noteworthy that the Fire Station Building Committee voted unanimously to change direction from this project as well. Mr. O'Leary has yet to state his complaint. The letter I received noted my conduct. That conduct has yet to be explained whatsoever. There is no valid explanation that has been brought forward to this date. The defendant is required to understand the complaint prior to a hearing for time to review and prepare for a defense which I have yet to receive or hear. I spoke as a resident, which has not received an exception from any of you yet, and now I'm being called in here as a select board member. Meanwhile, Mr. O'Leary and Mr. Wallner have been afforded the right to speak as residents when the sewer project is mentioned. Lastly, my comments have nothing to do with the facilities master plan. I spoke on the fire station project article. And Mr. O'Leary, you may be able to appreciate that since you noted how is this pertinent to the article as I was speaking that night, and being included in my letter nonetheless. I would believe that the committee, the Facilities Master Plan Committee, would not be pertinent to this complaint. Any further complaint or explanation heard tonight is new information.
Thank you, Mr. Massey. Mr. O'Leary?
Let's see, where to begin? We'll begin with June 11th. Like most people,
Can't hear you.
I'm sorry, like most people in the audience that evening at town meeting, we were all caught off guard and caught by surprise by your comments in relation to the participation by certain members of the Facilities Master Plan and Fire Station Building Committee because of their roles on the Finance Committee. It was explained to you at town meeting.
The mic doesn't.
The mics are actually
They're
for
not.
NORCAM.
They're not.
Again, I don't know how we can hear his.
Just turn back on.
It's very loud.
No, turn off the enough for 5 seconds.
All right.
Turn it back on.
How's this? Nope.
I think you shut it off.
Oh, there it is, there it is.
This is yours.
No, you gotta just go closer.
All right. So again, the actions that took place on June 11th, one of the last articles before town meeting regarding the appropriation of funds for the Fire Station Building Committee, which came about. Action was taken by a member of this board, who happens to be a liaison of this board to that committee, unbeknownst to the board members, unannounced to the board members, and questioning the validity of people who were serving on that committee, had been long-serving members of this community, for some of them 20-plus years. I was shocked and disappointed. First of all, the venue wasn't appropriate. The subject matter wasn't appropriate. The approach wasn't appropriate. It was extremely disrespectful to those individuals. There are other appropriate means by which you certainly have every right to raise the questions that you raised, no doubt about it, but there are certain ways of doing it. In a public venue, at an open town meeting, when it isn't pertinent to the article, is totally inappropriate, unprofessional, and irresponsible. Now, in relation to your membership on the Fire Station Building Committee, Facilities Master Plan Committee, you're the board's liaison at this particular point in time. And it's a little bit different liaison assignment than all the other ones that are, pretty much all the other ones that we have. It's not made by the chair, it's made collectively by this board to appoint you so that you could be a voting member on those particular committees. As I sit here, and as I've sat here all these years, I take my appointing authority very seriously. I want to make sure that we put people together to flesh out the issues, do the research, spend the time to understand what the issues are, and work with others to come to some sort of conclusion to bring back to this board and town meeting what actions would be appropriate in the best interest of the community. When I vote to put someone on a board, committee, or commission, and again, it's not very often that we do that, where they're a direct liaison of this board, that appointment is a reflection on me, personally. And when we made these appointments, just to be clear, I suggested to the chairman that you would probably be a very good candidate for these two committees, and that it would be a wonderful opportunity for you to get in on two very important projects that are ongoing. You're going to be here for 3 years at a minimum. It's good training ground where you could listen, learn, participate, bring your expertise to those two boards and committees. At the same time, if you recall, when we took the action that we did, I was very cognizant and tried to be very clear as to what a liaison assignment from this board, representing this board, means, and how it's supposed to work, and what my expectation as a voting member of this board would be. We all concurred as to what we thought and what we understand and what we agree the liaison assignments would be in these particular cases, which again are very few and far between. You said you understood, and you said that you bought into the idea, and that you would be representing the board. You don't have to check your own personal opinions at the door, but your job is to bring the dialogue back within the committee, back to this board committee and to this board, to get feedback as to where we're going to be. Let me just take a little sidestep here. You said, I was a naysayer on a 3-2 vote on that particular article. If you recall, I was very specific as to why I was voting no. When we were asked for a recommendation on that article, the Fire Station Building Committee and Facilities Master Plan Committee, neither one of them had taken any position as far as retreating from their previous discussion and recommendations to this board when we put that article on the warrant. And I was very clear. I was not going to support abandoning what was already supported and presented to this board publicly unless and until the Fire Station Building Committee recommended something different. At that point, they had not. Later on, they did, and when they did, I supported it, because that was their recommendation to us at that particular time. It had nothing to do with the merits of the arguments at the time. We have appointed these people who have devoted hundreds and hundreds of hours to this project.
Mr.
And they hadn't done it. I mean,
I'm sorry.
so
Let's keep it to the scope of why not. That's not on the agenda tonight.
But again, the reason, it was pointed out by Mr. Massey in his defense that I was a naysayer in relation to that, and that's why I was upset with what he did. That's not the case at all.
Okay.
And again, the reason that I voted no was because we had no recommendation from the building committee. So again, Mr. Chairman, and to my other colleagues here, when we make these appointments, I know we all take this seriously. I've served with over 30 different people on this board. And again, we come from all walks of life and different philosophical beliefs, and there are a lot of people that I've never agreed with and disagreed with significantly on issues. Never once have I felt so compelled to say that I made a mistake in recommending to the chair at this particular point, based upon Mr. Massey's actions and his lack of responsibility and a lack of respect for other board members. Never have I felt it necessary to say that a liaison that we've appointed to represent us should be considered for removal. In all the years I've sat here, and with all the cast of characters that I've sat with over the years, and that should say something. And we should all think about that seriously. It is a reflection. It is a reflection on. It is a reflection. Excuse me. It is a reflection on us individually as to who we appoint to represent us on the board. I think we've been ill-represented. Mr. Massey, in his letter seeking some support here this evening, said, come and see what his colleagues are doing against him. We're not doing anything against you. We're doing this because of you. You brought this issue forward. You caused this to happen. You've embarrassed us.
That's-
And you're not representing us well. Listen, I don't need any help to look bad in public. I do a fine enough job on my own. Fine enough job on my own. You know, so what I don't need is someone who's who's representing me, to cast aspersion and make us look poorly in public. What was done was wrong. It was mean-spirited. It appeared to be very orchestrated, and totally inappropriate, and again, totally unrelated to what was done. If you had a question as to someone's viability and ability to do it, there were means available to you to ask the town administrator and the chairman for opinion from town council. Quietly, not publicly, and get the answers that you needed and are certainly entitled to. You didn't do it. You chose to do it in a public venue to attack people who are long-standing, devoted public servants, and that's unfair and unwarranted. There's nothing to be hiding about this at all. So again, to my colleagues, if you think that you're being fairly represented here by this individual, it's fine. I know that I am not. That was not what was conveyed in public. That was not what was committed to by him when he took the position, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, and I think it's our responsibility our responsibility to ensure that when we put a liaison from this board to any board, committee, or commission, you know, that they reflect well on us, they report back to us, they ask our opinions, they bring it forward, and they don't drive other people away. These other volunteers. It's unnecessary, it's unwarranted, it's unfair, and we have a responsibility to insulate them from people who are incapable at this point, have proven themselves to be incapable of working on a committee, spending the time to learn, spending the time to understand, appropriately asking the questions in appropriate venues, and it would be a good reflection on us. That's not what happened.
Thank you, Mr. O'Leary. Mr. Wallner?
I'll be fairly brief. Can we not please have that comment? Just listen respectfully, okay? It's not an open meeting where you can just comment. And Chair, I'd ask you to kind of get that together, please. Okay, so prior to the town meeting, when we were doing liaison assignments, it was we had a discussion about you being on these two committees, and we had a discussion about what the role of the liaison is, and it was a back and forth. It was a deliberation. You asked questions. We went back and forth to discuss it. You had some hesitations. You discussed those with us. At the end, you promised this board that if you had any concerns, now you can have concerns, but if you had concerns, it was to be brought back to the board. But as Mr. O'Leary said, you were to, at any moment, you're to reflect the will of the select board. But you promised that if you had any concerns, you would come to the select board first and foremost. You agreed to that. We all agreed unanimously to assign you to that position. When you went to the select board, when you went to the town meeting, you actually brought forth an issue without discussing with any of us about that issue. That was a direct in conflict in what you promised this board. That to me is an egregious error. Then when you brought up that issue, apparently as a private citizen, because you went on the other side, which by the way, you are a select board member when you're at town meeting, the town council actually, you read from the book, town council actually came back and corrected you that your interpretation was incorrect, and despite the fact that town council expressed to you that it was incorrect, you continue to go down that path that you knew more than they did. And that also is an obtuse way of handling a lawyer who knows a lot more about this than anybody sitting on this board here does, who represents many, many communities. So another egregious error. And the last egregious error is at the end of that meeting, you had the lead, you had the chair in that committee in tears. In tears. Now that doesn't get you out of this position. But that is nothing that anybody on this board, I believe, at least myself, and I know Mr. O'Leary shares this with me as well. I've never seen anybody become in tears because of an interaction with a select board member. You're new to the board. It was hopeful that with your project management experience, you'd be a welcome addition to the board, but it has to be from the committee, but it has to be a point of respect. Your lack of respect in how you handled yourself, from your promise to us to how you handled yourself in that very short amount of time, caused me to immediately write the chair afterwards to say, we made a mistake, we need to get you off of this board. Off the committee, excuse me, I keep mixing up my words. I'll stop there.
Mr. Gonzalez?
So the night of town meeting, Nick, when you went up and spoke as a citizen,
Mr. Massey?
Mr. Massey, sorry. We had a discussion about that, and in hindsight, I believe that he wouldn't have done it again. I will give that he's brand new. There's a lot to know and a lot to learn when you come onto this board. And yes, you should take it upon yourself to learn that, but sometimes you learn the hard way, and that was a lesson learned. It should have been discussed with the board, not just thrown at us that way. And I think Mr. Massey understood that after we had a conversation. But I will give him that he was new and not understanding the process. The only reason that I was agreeing to remove him from committees is because he was saying he was not comfortable serving on the committees as they were. So in my position, the committee has to go forward. If he's going to say, I'm not going to serve on the committees, then somebody else needs to. That's all. It's not personal. So if Mr. Massey chooses to want to continue to serve on the committees, I will support that.
Mr. Massey?
Mine is a little
I'm
longer.
gonna give you a little leeway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate your time. I wish I didn't have to do this. I have spent a lot of my personal time to research and write up my defense of this process, which I've made clear to you that I spoke as a resident who questioned a local bylaw based upon my interpretation. You folks have spent time as well. This is now our second meeting in 2 months for this issue against me. You have confirmed that this is not a legal matter, yet you've utilized tax-paying dollars on town council, carrying high-rate legal fees to be at meetings, drive here, field the email communication, and present an opinion, only an opinion at that, for a case against your own select board member, again, on a local issue. One of those meetings, on June 27th, the one that you voted me to bring me to this hearing, is currently under a pending open meeting law complaint to the state by a member of the public. I'm brand new to this, but I'm being brought in as a select board member for a question that I asked standing on the other side of the podium, Nick Massey, Roger Circle, wanting to inquire into the bylaws that you were all sworn in to uphold. As we've learned thus far, the select board does not have authority over individual residents. Now, imagine how much more we can get done as a board if we met this often over the summer and did this much offline work to progress items that are more important to our town than this. We can focus on life after a note of the 2.5 override. We can focus on what direction to switch to for the fire station project. We can focus on how to create revenue in this town, and we can focus on the future of this town. I'd like to build trust with my board members, but with the understanding that I'm one of 5 elected officials with equal responsibilities, all having different angles on issues that come before us. I am of open mind and always available to discuss our differences with the intent of finding our common ground and respecting opinions of one another. I would certainly like to apologize for the forum in which I brought this up. I can improve on my approach. It is hard as a new board member to figure out how to converse individually with each member outside of this meeting while not crossing over open meeting law boundaries. When I got elected, there was no orientation. It didn't come with a folder or a binder of the policies in North Reading. I'm learning on the fly, but luckily I'm a quick learner. I don't even have all your cell phone numbers. But as three of you sitting here do know, you were notified 5 days in advance that I had this information with no response. I even alerted town council and one individual that may be subject to this as soon as town meeting started, neither with any exceptions. The opinion of advisory can be questioned, and I do have additional questions and relevant experience on that to bring forward today if necessary. Now, I certainly want to be abundantly clear that this is nothing and was never anything personal against any individual, as I do not know them much of all. I do know that their hearts are in the right place with regards to community service, and that has always been super appreciated. This is strictly a procedural question. Regardless of how many biased letters are written in the transcript about my character, there is a side to every story. I'm not asking to correct the records from the past or anything. I'm just asking to follow moving forward. I have about 10 pages of items here that I can get into to defend my position, none of which include the unnecessary intended humiliation for my two colleagues on this being a thing in the first place, being in the paper 2 straight weeks, this whole dog and pony show, all of which could hurt my reputation here in town, portraying me as someone I'm not on what is a principally questionable hearing. But also that if you truly have the best interests of the people of this town in mind, and the town in mind, two differences, you know in your heart that I am the most qualified to be on these 2 specific committees. I would bring the most value to these committees, and it would be a detriment to these committees to remove that potential. I really hope I don't have to get into a dialogue tonight with my colleagues on all of the supporting documentation here tonight, because they defend myself and only myself, and I don't want to say anything that would be of detriment to this town, as I've mentioned to all of you multiple times. I do want to do the right thing. I'm a man of integrity, strong compassion, and hard work in everything I do. I'm probably different than most of you are working with. I ask questions to everything, as you can tell. I'm high on transparency, I'm fiscally responsible, and I am excited and committed to serve this community and make the educated decisions that I believe benefit the residents best. That's the reason I'm sitting here today. I reserve my right to have this meeting go from executive to open. I want to be transparent to the community that I think why I'm sitting here today is wrongful of this board to do to me. I do wonder how many town employees have received this executive invite and requested it to go public. I even followed up in writing of my question at town meeting, and that is yet to be provided to me since my request, which was sent on June 13th. The reason I know this is wrongful, and to wrap this up, if you looked more into the bylaws in North Reading, there is another section in there that pertains to the powers of the select board. Within there is the powers to rescind appointments. And under that section, it notes, the select board, quote, the select board by majority vote of its full membership may rescind for cause any appointment made to any board except the Board of Appeals or other quasi-judicial body, provided that a majority of said board shall so recommend. So, fellow colleagues, do you have these minutes to present from both of those committees that would support the reasoning for this hearing tonight?
Mr. Massey, I'm going to have Mr. Klein answer on that section.
Sure. Is this on? Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. As you said, there's the charter provision that you just referenced, but there's also a rule, and Rule 3.8 of the Select Board policies covers more than that charter provision does. That charter provision applies just to, if you go and you look at the language that you just read, it applies only to board appointments. If you look at the rule, it applies to committees, commissions, and board appointments. So since you were only appointed to an advisory committee or 2 advisory committees, that provision doesn't apply because it's not a board. If you look at other places in the charter, such as...
I'm sorry, does it mention the word board or anything in there besides
the charter provision...
power to rescind appointments? Which is,
No,
this
yes,
is an appointment.
yes, you just read it. It says boards. Read what you just said. It says boards. You actually just read it.
You might be right.
Okay, so it only says board. And if you look at like 4 or 5 different other places in the charter, it talks about boards, commissions, committees. I could read you other sections, section 234 of the charter, 524 of the charter, 531. This provision that you just read only applies to boards. And that's why the rule that has a very specific procedure and a very thorough, rigid procedure, I would say, applies to board appointments, committee appointments, and commission appointments. So that's why it doesn't require the majority vote of the full board, the one that you just read, because it isn't a board. So hopefully that answers your question.
Mr. Massey, did that answer the question?
I think what I took here, and if you can just confirm,
Sure.
select board policies trump the town charter?
No, they work in consistency. The town charter provision that you read only applies to rescinding board appointments. You read the language. I could read it again if you want. I have it right here.
I'm all set. Mr.
Okay.
Chair, I have no further comment.
Okay. So, I'm going to stick to the very scope of why we're here. Okay? I did not like the approach that Mr. Massey took at town meeting. I think he could have gone about it better. I think that, we do need to work with a lot of different people on some very important things. And I agree that he has the right to say whatever. As private select board, even though I think it's very difficult to separate, as I learned for 2 years talking about sewer, Vincenzo Studo disappeared. Might as well change my driver's license to select board member Studo. So I get that. However, I do not feel that a moment of an ill-advised approach warrants removal from these committees. Please, no applause. I got enough people who don't like me. And more, it's because I think that I will give the benefit of the doubt, even though sometimes it is difficult to do. Because some of those members that were very affected, I've worked very closely with. However, I have to follow my own lead, and I am narrowing the scope. That to me, the question is whether the way, ill-advised or not, opinion or not, the way it was expressed at town meeting, which I've already said I do not agree with, if that's enough for this. And I don't think so. But more importantly though, Mr. Massey, it's because I trust that in being more familiar with a lot and this crash course you got in a lot, okay, and I also was in your situation where I was elected right when COVID started, so it was just me in a basement with this 500-page green book that makes absolutely no sense, which is true. You can read it all you want. Bylaws are hard. Municipal law is very, okay? So I can appreciate that. However, though, I will be making sure, as a chair should, that this was a one-off, because I want to believe it was. Because I do agree that when Mr. O'Leary said, hey, we have this new member, and I was told about his background by some others as well that I know in the community, and we did think that he was a great fit. I mean, I got his initials right after mispronouncing him for about a couple months until him and some others said, you keep mentioning my title wrong. And that's the whole point, that I didn't have the expertise, but I wanted someone with the expertise. So as of right now, I don't feel all that, whatever I can think about how we presented it, and I was not happy about it because yes, I do agree that I nominated Mr. Massey. So those upset about it were like, this is your guy for that. So you're in a tight spot because you're like, yeah, I did do that and it's on video. But I do not feel that it warrants removal at this time. And I am going to for better or for worse, I'm gonna give the benefit of the doubt that I do not think, and again, you can disagree on anything. I'm not telling you can't do that. You can disagree, and you know what? A lot of the times I'm on committees where I say, hey, I agree with you guys, but I'm gonna take it back to my full board, and they're not. Right? And it happens a lot where it's like, hey, I mean, this was an ongoing theme for me with a lot of things where it's like, I agree. So Vincenzo Studo, you got my vote, but I'm telling you, I'm not gonna get 3 out of 5, which is what you're supposed to do. You're being honest. So I do think though that, for me, it just, at this point, taking this action, I agree, is just gonna cause, like, it's too early. It stinks because I didn't like it, but at the same time, under the scope and the way I understand it, and if I'm gonna follow the rules and the bylaws, even when people disagree with me, because I have to, I'm gonna follow this one, I don't think it merits it. So, Mr. Massey, I'm gonna give you an opportunity to respond to anything I just said, because I was the last one to speak, like I said I would.
I have no comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Would anyone else like to make a final statement that is not repetitive or summary in nature? Mr. O'Leary.
I'm still at a loss, because the comments that you made, Mr. Massey, I heard no apology to the affected individuals. All I heard was, I heard that you were concerned about your own personal reputation, when it was these other people's reputations that are being called into question in a public venue. I heard nothing as far as whether or not you've learned anything in relation to, was it an appropriate place to bring it up or not?
Through you.
I'm sorry, hold on, let him finish and then I'm gonna,
Was you guys, me,
and then I'm gonna let one final one and then you respond.
And again, I didn't hear anything from you that you understand, or maybe you don't understand, or maybe you don't agree, that the venue that you chose to bring it up was inappropriate and wrong, and you were sorry, and maybe you learned something from that. I didn't hear that. And that's what's of concern to me. That's really, again, if I'm going to appoint him and have him remain there as a liaison, as I said, I made a mistake, I'll admit it. Openly, publicly, transparently, that I goofed. I made a mistake.
Well,
That's not what I've heard yet.
Well,
All I've
Mr.
heard
O'Leary,
about, he's worried about his reputation and not concerned about other people. That's wrong.
I'm just
And I'm
gonna-
not gonna send him back there to serve with these people as my liaison with my vote, unless I hear something more. And again, I'm for people, give people second chances and all the rest. You know, he said he wants to learn and educate himself and make educated decisions. He was here less than a month. He maybe met twice with these
So,
people.
Mr. O'Leary,
And it's already done, you know, and he
move
hasn't
on.
taken the time to do
I'm
it. So
gonna
again,
move-
I haven't heard
And,
the remorse, I
So-
haven't heard the apology, I haven't heard it won't
Thank-
happen again, and I'll be
thank-
more cognizant of it, nothing.
thank you, Mr. O'Leary. Mr. Wallner.
In fact,
Mr. Wallner.
I hear silence. Okay, so I literally wrote practically the same thing. You were saying it's a one-off, it's a crash course, but your behavior today has demonstrated to me that that's what he just said. You didn't apologize to the board, to us, for the action you've taken. You didn't take any responsibility for your behavior during that. All you've done is to come up with a lot of excuses. And then you challenged the attorney again in front of us, and the attorney straightens it out, and, you had a hard time sitting with it.
On that one, I'll say, no, I'm sorry. Wait, stop. Point there. He didn't challenge, he asked a question, he was answered, we moved on. Is that, no, it's Mr., no. We are not gonna do this. Mr. O'Leary, you got a chance, Mr. Wallner's gonna finish, then I'm gonna give something on this side, and then we're gonna take a vote. And Mrs. McNeil has a really hard time keeping the notes when everyone's speaking all over each other, so if we can please, Mr. Wallner.
So what I would propose is, I propose that he steps down from this assignment now, and we give him a year to go to those meetings and learn what it's all about. And I think that would be the proper action. Again, please.
But you didn't like them.
I think that's the proper action,
Just let-
is that he takes the time to learn. As I said,
as I said when I ran for election. election. Just making forward.
Hold on, you're gonna get your chance. You're gonna get,
This would be an opportunity for learn how things work, for you to learn what's going on in that group, and to be a contributor to it in the future. Because as I said, way back when we were going through the elections, anybody who comes into this board has to come with a lot of skill sets. You, my friend, are lacking skill sets.
I'm not gonna, no, I'm gonna stop you there. Unless there's anything left on the scope, is there anything else? I'm gonna move on. We're getting way off topic. And I don't need another email saying we're getting off the agenda.
My point is that he has a lot to learn.
Okay.
And so I'm suggesting that
You make your point.
You suggested, but it was duly noted and now we're getting repetition. Mrs. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you watched the meeting last week, you see that I was in a hot seat. It's not an easy job sitting up here. You know, you take this position, you get elected to this position, you sit in this seat, and you take some heat sometimes. And you gotta have some thick skin and move on, you know? So I will reiterate that when you start on the select board, it's not easy. There is a lot to learn. There is a lot of policy. I did a few things wrong in my day in the beginning that I took a little heat for. And you shake it off and you move on and you learn. You learn from it. So in a private conversation, and I hope you don't mind, Mr. Massey, he did express some regret for the way he did it. Not what he did, what he brought forward, he believed in. But the way it was done was not the proper way, and he didn't fully understand that. And
Mrs. Gonzalez, though, we already said that. We're not gonna repeat.
we repeated a lot last week.
Yeah, but we're just we're gonna move on again because, so anything new?
Okay, so yes,
Go ahead.
keep it together, and this won't be the first or last time. You're gonna get a little heat, and you know, you've got a lot of support out here. So.
Okay, Mr. Massey, I'm gonna give you just whatever, and then I'm gonna call for a vote.
I'd like you all to consider the complaint of the executive session that I'm being called here for, and then look yourselves in the mirror as to what you said to me tonight. Consider that. Thank you.
Do I have a motion? Does anyone want to read the motion to consider removal?
Is there one there?
I don't have it.
I have it right here. I will hand it.
I move that the Select Board rescind for cause Select Board Member Massey's appointment to the Facilities Master Plan Committee and the Fire Station Building Committee based upon the charges set forth in the June 27, 2024 notice of executive session being substantiated.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wallner, second by Mr. O'Leary. Any brief further discussion?
Just one.
Oh, Jesus.
Sorry you don't want to hear it, but you know, this is pretty serious stuff. Most of what we talked about this evening was bylaws and all this other baloney. The reason we're here is because of how other people were treated and the actions that were taken by this board member. Not the, again, he has every right to raise the questions he raised.
Mr.
And
O'Leary,
I'm all in favor of that. Excuse me.
Can I be chair for a minute?
Mr. Chairman,
About that.
this is
All right, we're gonna.
this is pertinent to the article, to the motion before us. This is
Okay,
It's
but we're
pertinent to the
gonna,
motion before us.
but we just talked about that. We're not gonna talk about it again.
Excuse me, so the discussion of the motion is before us.
I can't.
So again, to my colleagues, this is a very important issue. It's not about the bylaw, it's not about his right to ask the question, it's how he's how he's doing it? Is he capable to perform appropriately, to reflect well on the board as our liaison? I think not.
Okay. Anyone else?
I would just say that we are,
Oh, just speak. You're gonna have to just speak.
no, I'm
I
gonna wait
know,
for
we're not gonna
silence.
get,
I'm gonna wait for silence.
okay, we're
Um,
silent.
We are taking this and dumping it on these two committees' laps. And I hope it works out okay. I hope you actually have learned something, but it would be a real shame if we get feedback afterwards, because it sounds like you have enough support. But it's gonna be a real shame that we get more feedback of the same thing that's going on right here. And I'm afraid that's gonna happen.
Okay. Anyone else?
I just have a question for Mr. Massey.
You do?
Do you want to serve on these committees?
Absolutely.
Okay. That's. Okay. Roll call. Mr. O'Leary.
On the motion, aye.
Aye.
Mrs. Gonzalez.
No.
Mr. Massey.
Can I recuse myself?
The chair is no. Motion is not carried. Can I have a motion? I need the last motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Massey, second by Mr. O'Leary. Do I need to roll call this or just in favor? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.